Welcome to another edition of the MDM podcast. With MDM, you gain market intelligence, insights, and research to succeed in wholesale distribution markets. Now in our 57th year, we help industry leaders like you drive innovation and outperform your competition. I'm Mike Hockett, our executive editor. Denver-based AIS Industrial and Construction Supply may be just a single location distributor, but its innovation efforts in sales, marketing, e-commerce, and technology have outdone that of many larger counterparts in the industry. And as a 40-year company veteran, AIS President and CEO Dale Hahs has seen just about everything the industry can offer in terms of changes and trends. I invited Dale to stop by and discuss what AIS has been up to lately, the advances and frustrations that come with e-commerce and marketplaces, what he's seen change in the industry during his tenure, and what he'd do differently in a career restart. Enjoy. Dale, welcome to the MDM podcast, and thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Normally, I like to begin these podcasts by having the guest walk me through their career background, but looking at your background, it's fairly simple given that you've been with AIS Industrial and Construction Supply your whole career. So it might be better to have us start with an introduction to AIS. Can you give me an overview of who or what AIS is, what it looks like today, and the markets that it serves?
You bet. So AIS was started by my grandfather, Paul Christensen, in 1945 after the Second World War, when he saw a need to supply the airlines at Stapleton, which we are still located north of what used to be the Stapleton property and is now completely been redeveloped into Central Park, a mix of residential and commercial and all of that. He started it to service the airlines, and he bought a bunch of surplus A&MS hardware after the war, and that's how he started. So he always focused more on the nuts and bolts and things like that as far as airplane supplies. The original name of the company was Aviation Service Supply, but he changed the name pretty quick because people assumed that he repaired airplanes, and he was getting all these calls on the weekend to repair airplanes. So he changed it to Aviation Industrial Supply, and we operated here in Denver for most of our history under that name, and there's still people that know us by that name and are confused by our new name, which is AIS Industrial and Construction, until I explain, all the history behind it and say, we're still Aviation Industrial Supply. It's just we don't do anything with airplanes anymore. And then people remember who we are. Over the years, he added a lot of lines, more on the manufacturing side of things, MRO, to service, a bigger group of customers. The story is always told, since we were right by the airport, the manufacturers would schedule a trip to come out to ski, but then they'd come see us first before heading up to the mountains so they could write the trip off. So that was just nice to be located right next to the airport. And so when I joined in 1985, I graduated from Westmont College in Santa Barbara. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. My brother Chris was staying with me. We were living in Santa Barbara for the summer, and he said, well, go work for Grandpa and get some experience. It'd always be good. So I called up my grandfather and talked to him about it. And he said, yeah, I think that'd be a great idea. So I came out in 85 and at the age of 21, and it has been my entire career. About the same time, around 1986, we hired a sales guy that sold to commercial contractors, sold to electrical contractors, mechanical contractors, and oil and gas construction refineries. So we started to change our product mix to help support his efforts and who he was calling on. So you fast forward to today, and that is primarily who we're selling to. Is our number one customer is an electrical contractor, and then we have mechanical contractors, we have plumbers, we have oil and gas construction, industrial construction, but mainly on the commercial construction side. So I tell people we are a staff to house, but without all the fasteners. So we focus on the tools. So our big lines are Milwaukee and rigid, the legacy rigid with the the pipe threaders and the sea snake cameras and that type of thing. Greenlee and all the
Yep.
related brands, Klein, everything that an electrician would need. We also have a tool repair division that is factory authorized to repair most of the brands that we sell, especially most of the big brands. So we're factory authorized to repair rigid sea snake cameras, rigid pro press. It's all in-house repair, and that has been a good profit center for us, and also a good way to differentiate from other distributors and have something that gets people in the door, because
Yep.
that's one of the pain points for everybody is tool repair.
And it's always been the solo location there in Denver, right? I know there's multiple buildings on your
Right.
at the
There's
headquarters there, but it's the one location.
the one location now, and we have 5 different addresses that have all been joined together over the years, and it's about 50,000 square feet of
Yep.
combined space. One of the buildings is actually an old aircraft hangar that we actually rented to Frontier Airlines back in the 50s.
Hmm.
And now it is our biggest building with the highest ceilings, and that's where we store our ladders and also our shelving rack and locker division, which is another standalone division we have that assembles and installs lockers and shelving. We did have a couple of branch locations, had one in Fort Collins at one time and one in Silt, which is near Glenwood Springs. But over the years, we found that it was just so much simpler, and most of these places we can ship to anyway. So
Yeah.
we just run trucks to those areas rather than trying to maintain a branch.
Can you share what the head count is there at AIS?
We have 44 full time and about 5 part-time.
And then you basically cover this next question I was going to ask you, but AIS, like you mentioned, has been in business since 1945, rebranded from Aviation Industrial Supply, or it was Aviation Industrial Supply until 2011. So I won't make you rehash all that, but any other major developments in AIS's history in terms of its leadership or other major milestones you haven't touched on already?
Well, it's really interesting to reflect back on the career, because next year will be my 40th year here. It's also our 80th anniversary, and
Yeah.
I've seen so many changes in technology. I mean, I remember our first fax machine. When I first joined, we were using a mainframe computer, and our mainframe computer, the hard drive on it was 75 megabytes. It was a copper disk, and we ran our entire computer, all of our business off of that one mainframe computer. We had 4 workstations, so not everybody had a workstation. One of the first milestones was switching to software that ran on Windows and having individual workstations for everybody. And then that opened up, the whole world of the PC and all of the capabilities of Excel and Word and all of that. That was something that I was really excited to have those kind of tools, because I'd been doing things by hand on columnar paper for spreadsheets and everything else. My background, my original degree was in math from Westmont, and then I went to Metro State College and got my degree in accounting to understand more of the finance side of things. So I wear a lot of hats like anybody in a small company would. So, but the accounting side of thing is actually kind of a core strength for me, and I think it serves me well in understanding the flow of business and how everything works.
So you were definitely a numbers guy coming out of college, and like you said, you joined the company in '85. But I'm sure that given your family background, that you were pretty familiar with AIS's operations before you even joined the company. And I'm always curious to hear about, what those formative years were for for executives who essentially had the business as part of their family. So was joining the business a natural progression for you back then, or was there a learning curve once you got started when you were 21 years old?
Well, so it was my mom's dad that started the company. I grew up out in California, so my only exposure to the company was working for the company in the summers in my junior and senior year of high school. So I got that exposure to it, which was a pretty good exposure to a lot of different things. And I did warehouse work, I did computer programming, I did a little bit of everything at the time. So I had a pretty good idea of everything we did. But I mean, you don't really understand it till you come full time and dive right in and start, figuring things out. So
Yeah.
one interesting thing is when I started, I was doing mainly accounting and like invoicing and things like that. But I was sitting kind of out in the main bullpen, and my uncle sat right across from me, my Uncle Kobe, and he was running the company at the time. And the phone would ring and he'd say, pick it up, take care of the customer. So I had to learn early on how to do that part too, and how to pick up a catalog and read a catalog and figure out where the information was, and, take care of the customer. So
Yeah.
it's so much of what I've learned has been on the job, here, just dealing with everything that came up. And then also attending, when we joined AD, Affiliated Distributors, in 1999, I got to, as a pretty young guy in my 30s, to start attending network meetings with
Yeah.
folks that had been doing this for 40 years themselves. And so I tell people I spent the first 5 years of most of those meetings not saying a word and just listening. I really didn't feel like I had anything to contribute, being the young guy, but I was absorbing it, and I was learning so much, just rubbing elbows and listening to people. And you learn not only industry, you learn interaction and how to relate to each other, and relationships and that type of thing, and the ability to network with the distributors, build relationships there, and then also network with suppliers and start building relationships with manufacturers. I have relationships with folks with Milwaukee that go back 30 plus years. I mean, if you come to my office, it really is a museum of just different things that I collected over the years. I have Milwaukee for a time made these really fancy carts, like a Rubbermaid cart, or it
Mm-hmm.
was a locking cart. And I have in my office a actual sample replica, like a small model of it, that was given to me by Tom Blue when I was back at Milwaukee corporate. So it's just cool to think back over all the years, and it's not just the things. More important is those relationships that you've made with all of the people along the way, and that's such a great way to learn.
Definitely. And you already touched on all the technology changes that you've seen in your almost 40 years at the company. Is there anything else that you would identify as the biggest changes you've seen in industrial distribution or industrial supply in general? I mean, obviously, technology is the big one there. That's easy to point to. But whether it's on the relationship side, on how to sell in distribution, anything else that you've seen really substantially change over the decades?
Well, I mean, one big thing was the advent of the internet, and before then, all advertising was done in some sort of print fashion. We used to spend $60,000 a year just on yellow page ads, because that was how people found information. One thing my grandfather did that was really interesting is, in the white pages, he would take out a white page listing, which is basically just, in the white pages, you could just have different ways to relay your phone number. So
Yeah.
he took out things like Bandit distributors and other brands, and it turned out Bandit's actually located here in Colorado.
Hmm.
So when the operator would look up the information, because you used to have to call information for, to get phone numbers. So they asked for Bandit. Bandit distributors would show up before Bandit, and they would actually give them our phone number. They call and say, "Is this Bandit?" And we'd say, "No, but we're distributors. We'd be happy to sell you." So just creative things like that you had to use the framework that you were in at the time. But as the internet started to come about, and all this visibility to pricing, and then your competition just magnified, where you're no longer dealing with just your area, you're
Yeah.
dealing with the entire world out there of anybody that's selling things. So that has really made it challenging, where you've got to, now your information is at the fingertips, but it's also at the fingertips of everybody else. So it's you're always getting customers coming in and looking at their phones and pulling up a price on Amazon and showing it to you and saying, "Hey, would you match this?" So you have to play that game, but you have to learn to always stand up for yourself, and price the value that you're providing into what you're, the price you're giving to the customers.
During the 2023 STAFTA convention this past November in San Antonio, I was there and I attended a panel session that you were on, which was a panel of a couple distributors, a couple manufacturers, and a couple manufacturers reps. And that session really covered labor topics, technology, marketing, and more. And I thought you had some great commentary there. So I want to revisit a few of the same questions that you addressed during that panel. Starting with the labor front, you touched on how one of AIS's top challenges is competing for talent against the big national players out there. So without sharing AIS's secret sauce, how or can you share how AIS goes about recruiting and retaining talent today, which again, it's often cited as the top challenge by all distributors and manufacturers that we talk to.
Oh, it is. It is very challenging. And so whenever we have a position, we just kind of hit it from every angle we can. We ask the factory reps if they know of anybody around town. We ask internally, does anyone know anyone for this position that would be a good fit? We made up these little business cards that have a QR code that you can scan that will take people directly to the hiring portion of our website to make it easy. If you were out and about and say you're at a Home Depot and somebody provided really good service, you could give them that card and say, hey, have you ever thought about working for an independent distributor? We've gotten some of our hires on using Indeed, and LinkedIn has actually worked pretty well too with certain types of roles. I think you have to learn which roles, which platform is going to serve the role you're looking for the best. But
Yeah.
I think you have to hit it everywhere. We have an ongoing sign that hangs out outside our showroom that says we're hiring. So people come in all the time and just drop off a resume on the front counter, and one of us will try and go out and talk to them. And if they pique our interest, then we'll keep their resume on file and contact them when we have an opening. So it's just, you got to hit every angle you can think of, but my son Taylor has done a good job of learning how to create some ads easily and putting them up on LinkedIn. So we try and do it without spending a whole lot of money, because we've gone down the recruiting side of things, and really we've only tried it out once, and it was a recruiter where we paid up front, and we ended up finding someone we had already talked to before. It was a good candidate, but they weren't interested. And then we also ended up just filling the position organically on our own with, putting out feelers. So
Yeah.
it's a crapshoot. You never know where the person's going to come from. And I think the other thing too is you've got to cultivate a really great place to work. And when you do that, that will attract other people in town that may not be working somewhere where they're treated very well. So, we all know each other. There's a lot of independent contractors we compete against, and everybody knows the different culture at each company. And we are known for being a good place to work where people are treated fairly. And I think that becomes your best selling point.
Word of mouth definitely seems to be the best way to go about recruiting talent. I've definitely heard that from other small distributors. And like you said, you do really have to attack all these different channels, because the way you recruit for warehousing is not going to work for how you're recruiting sales staff and
Right.
technical positions. So there is definitely a channel for each component of the staffing situation. So, and
Right.
everyone's up against it right now. Well, the timeline on the AIS website notes that the company began selling products on eBay back in 2006. And I found that a bit surprising, given that that was still when distribution as a whole was still just finding its footing with e-commerce, and it was mostly the major nationals that were getting involved. So how has that early adoption and embracement of e-commerce helped AIS over the past now 18 years? Given that many small independent distributors are notoriously slow when it comes to technology adoption.
Right. Well, how that evolved was we had a guy that worked for us for a long time, left, went to go work for a competitor, was there for a year and a half, and came back. And the two things he said to us, he said, you got to join True Value Hardware as a co-op, which we didn't know you could do that. And then he also said, you got to start selling on eBay, because he was selling Mustang parts himself, got exposed to it personally. And then over at this competitor, he figured out how to start listing some of their products too. So actually he told me about it even before he came back. So I like created our ID on eBay, and I used tools 0234. And the reason I chose 0234 is because there is a drill that Milwaukee had made for years, the 0234-6, and it's just always the part number I think of first when I'm testing for things on the computer and how they're working. So that just came to mind. So we put that up. I think we sold a Wilton Vice the first go around. So when he came back and started working for us, he started in mass listing stuff on eBay. And like we had some brands, like we had Midatoya that had been sitting forever. We had probably $20,000 of Midatoya on the shelf. It was one of the first things we listed, and we sold through the whole thing. So we said, wow, this is a great opportunity to get rid of dead stock. So over the years, that's been kind of what we target. We target dead stock, things we've had for a long time that we just need to get rid of, that we've written off. And then we target things where we find niches that nobody else is serving on eBay or Amazon now. It's a challenge because you'll find something really good, you'll get it going, and then you'll either get shut down by the manufacturer who tells you, oh, you can't sell that anymore. And you'll say, why not? They say, well, we just decided you can't. We're either some cases they say nobody can, or they'll say, okay, we have a handful of people that are authorized to sell that, and you're not one of them. Well, can we get on? Nope, sorry, you already made the decision. So it's very frustrating because it seems like most big companies, their e-commerce division is a whole different silo than their brick and mortar channel, and they don't work together. Lots of times they make decisions for the e-commerce side seems to make decisions that are more geared around the big e-commerce guys and making them happy. But I keep arguing that there is a place for the brick and mortar e-commerce guy that's supporting the brand and has all this inventory on the shelf, and he just needs an additional avenue to sell that when things aren't selling in his local marketplace, or something gets discontinued. And during COVID, that really became important to have inventory, because you might have something that nobody else in the world has, and if you can put it on the internet, you can sell it. So over the years, we've had some success on both eBay and Amazon doing that, and we continue to try and grow that. We are growing our skills as far as technology and integration with Amazon and with other tools as far as analyzing and figuring out what products. I mean, ultimately, I want to have tools where I can analyze everything on my shelf and have everything listed that could be listed that I can make some money on. I'm not going to give it away unless it's a dead item. If it's a dead item, then I don't mind getting whatever I can out of it. It's like better than liquidation, which is 20 cents on the dollar. So it's constantly evolving. You have to constantly keep educating yourself. You always feel like you're behind a little bit, even if you really are ahead a little bit than others. It's just you never are done. And we're trying to develop our own e-commerce site too, and that is another huge challenge. It's outside of the framework of what most distributors do. You've got to figure out how to do it all. One thing that we have going for us is being part of AD, and that AD looked collectively a number of years ago at how can we help our members the best online, and they decided that content was the best way to do it. So they started the AD e-commerce division, and that has just grown and grown and grown. And we were one of the early adopters of it, and we went in full-fledged. We adopted all of their categorization as our categorization, so we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. And that helps so much, because when they onboard a new manufacturer, they put it into the whole category structure, so it's the same with everybody, because manufacturers are notoriously, they're all unique, and they all call their categories something different, and even subtle differences will create a new category within your system if you're just bringing in their categories as it exists, which we did do early on. We paid somebody to scrape websites and provide data for us, and we got all this data and put it in, and we realized we have like 10 different ways of having the
Hmm.
exact same category. So that has helped so much
Yeah.
to have AD doing that content creation for us, that we can just concentrate on the structure that it goes into. So that is a big advantage that AD has. And I think that's something that a lot of the other marketing groups are starting to look at, but we're
Yeah.
way ahead of them already because they've been doing it for years. So,
Yeah, it's just crazy how much the e-commerce game has changed in the industrial supply side in just 10 years. You think of
yeah,
industrial supplies, this kind of slow-moving industry, but just as you covered, there's so much nuance, and it can be frustrating nuance when it comes to, distributors are trying to sell on Amazon while also competing with them and while also trying to emulate what Amazon is doing on the customer experience side
right.
of things. So there's a lot of points of frustration I think that can come with everything on the e-commerce front. So, but it is very interesting to see that how long AIS has experience in e-commerce now, and that you guys are trying to get your own platform going. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's the side that I get really excited about the e-commerce piece because I see so much potential in it. A lot of distributors like us, they don't want to have anything to do with selling on Amazon because
Yeah.
they just hate Amazon, which I hate it the same way. I love it and hate it. I mean, I use it
Yeah.
personally. It is so easy. They've made it so easy, and they are taking over more and more of our space. But if you don't get in there, you're going to miss out. I mean, a lot of the municipalities we have found out have started partnering with Amazon, and they're using Amazon as kind of their way to buy stuff when they can't find it anywhere else. So, one thing that Amazon is doing is they will let you designate yourself as a small business in your Amazon store so that when municipalities are buying, they can buy from you and that can fulfill their small business requirements. So
Yeah.
I think it's something you got to know who, your, I don't know if you call them an enemy, but it is just another platform. It's the world's largest platform. And if you're not on it selling, you're missing out on a way to get rid of, product that's sitting on your shelf.
Yeah. Switching gears here on the staff to panel, you touched on how AIS had recently hired a recent Purdue graduate as a marketing specialist, and this was a new position for AIS. And you noted how AIS had started using a local father and son social media consultancy to make social media posts on the company's behalf. Can
Right.
you take me through how that move has improved AIS's marketing efforts since that hire?
Well, two different things. As far as our marketing specialist, that has been a wonderful addition to what we do because marketing always before was very hit or miss and done in little spurts as we had time and ideas. Now, when you have a marketing person, they can constantly be looking at how you're going to market in every piece. So every time we have a company event, they're looking at it through the marketing lens, and I can give her guidance on how to do things, and she can constantly be working on it. Where some of that stuff would just get stuck to the side of my desk and not get done and not get done well. So then, she helps with the flyers, helps with organization of our marketing materials, works on the website internally so that we're constantly maintaining, adding blogs, creation of blogs, just so many pieces of everything you do, you can have a marketing touch on. And it's important to have that. So you have a cohesive message you're bringing, and you have a way of continually getting information out. As far as the third party social media company goes, we've been working with them for a couple of years now. And it's just great to have somebody posting on your behalf because, again, even if you're trying to do it internally with a dedicated person, you're never going to do the same job as somebody is that's all they're doing. So they post fun things on our behalf, like every holiday, they'll post something. They'll post things about products. Some of it is independent from us giving them guidance. They just have gotten to know us. He's come through a few times and taken pictures throughout the building. Whenever we have an event, like we did the We Supply America event, came, took a bunch of pictures of that, and then did a bunch of follow-up postings on that. So when they get to know who you are, they can post as if it was you. They can respond to people online as if it was you. They can just grow your brand across multiple channels. And I get a lot of fellow distributors and manufacturers that when I go to industry events, they say, "Oh yeah, I saw follow you on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever," so they know what's going on. And
Yep.
there's several other folks within the industry that are really good at that too. Like sister, well, they're a fellow member of AD Industrial Supply in Salt Lake. Jessica's always posting really cool things which she finds in the archives of old,
Right.
advertisements or things like that. I love all that history, but
Yep.
I think it's just a really good thing to be constantly posting on social media, fun things and also marketing things. So.
Yep. And then during the panel session, you showed off what is AIS's business cards, which aren't actually cards, but rather casino chips. It's
Yeah,
a small palm-sized chip that you can hand out. And you also mentioned how the company had bought a 1946 red Ford truck that matches the one in your company's logo and how
yeah.
you bring it to special events like golf outings and things like that. So combined with these chip cards, these seem like there are a couple of good examples of differentiators in a time when distributors can use every differentiator they can find. How would you say that the company leverages, these small but impactful differentiators like this?
Well, it's just being creative, and I think all along, I mean, that has been the beauty of working in a family distributorship. It's just the freedom of being able to do whatever you want. And there's all these things that need to get done, but you can gravitate those towards those things that really get you excited. And through the years, the marketing piece has always got me really excited. So the chip, I can't remember whose idea it was, but it was kind of a collaboration. And once we thought of it, oh, I know how we got that idea. I always say the best ideas are borrowed. So there is a company called Rivet MRO that is active in AD and active in a lot of other associations, and he's a very creative guy that helps people use their co-op budgets. But that's his card. He has a little poker chip that has information about his company. I thought, oh, that's a great idea. So we just looked online, found a poker chip provider, and we did different color combinations for each of our outside sales guys. We
Hmm.
did a chip for come take a tour, because a big part of how we go to market is just getting people in and walking them through the 50,000 square feet
Yeah.
of warehouse and showing them what we have. And then we do another one for just I forget what it was. We do one for our forklift division. We do one for the shelving division, and then all the outside sales guys and a lot of the inside sales guys got their own chip that they can hand out. And the fun thing is, every time you hand somebody a chip, they really have a different reaction than they do a business card. Business card, this
Yeah.
guy like ho hum and get it all the time, but a chip, their eyes light up and they go, "Oh wow, that's very cool."
Hmm.
Then as far as the truck goes, ever since the red truck and our logo just kind of evolved, because in some of our early marketing, I said I want to have an old truck in our logo. So it actually wasn't originally even our logo. It was in a T-shirt design, because we found this graphic artist in Steamboat Springs, and he started doing these T-shirt designs, and he started incorporating the red truck into them.
Hmm.
And the red truck originally was just a truck with our logo superimposed on the side. But then I was showing this to a friend of mine who had some marketing background. He says, "Well, you don't know what the truck is doing." He said, "Put some giant tools in the back." So that's when our designer created all these oversized tools. It's funny because there's a Milwaukee drill in the back, and it's an M12 Milwaukee drill. And that's because that was the one that he used in his shop, around the shop. So he had one there he could take a picture of and model. So,
Yeah.
and it's got a rigid wrench. It's got Louisville ladder, a DeWalt Sawzall. So it's just a representation of who we are.
Yeah.
But once we had that, then I was like, oh man, we got to get that exact truck. So we used to have annual open houses, and somebody came to the counter during our open house and said, my dad has that exact same truck. And so
Hmm.
it was in a neighboring town in Brighton, Colorado, close to us. So 5 years ago, we went and saw the guy, saw the truck. It had only 60,000 original miles on it, immaculate condition, in red, just
Hmm.
like ours. So I kept his information, and then last year we were in a position where we could buy it. And so I called him up, said, "You interested?" Made a deal, bought it. And then we started changing it out. We changed out the rims and the tires. So we put the white wall tires on it and the moon cap rims so it would match exactly. So now it's pretty close to how it looks in the logo. And we during the nice months, we'll pull it out, put it in front of the showroom. We've done industry events, like there's a Excel sponsors a linesman rodeo at a racetrack every year. So that was one of the first things we brought that to, and they have a old car show going at the same time. So we showed it there. So it just always gets a lot of attention. So it's another thing that people know us for. They know us for the red truck. And even the logo itself, it's on the side of all of our company vehicles that drive around town. People notice that logo, and it's just a great picture story to tell. You say it's an old truck from 1945 when we were founded, and we have lots of tools. It's full of tools. So it just
Yeah.
makes a quick picture story something easy to tell and remember and relate to.
Yeah. Yeah, one of those visual physical indicators
Yep,
that just people just remember when they're just in between doing other stuff.
right,
You already touched on how AIS is leveraging AD's membership, how you guys are a member of there, and product data has become such a big topic of conversation in the industrial supply space. And it's always been kind of a point of contention in the whole distributor manufacturer relationship, given that a lot of manufacturers just don't want to share product data and they'd rather keep it pretty close to the vest. But I
right.
know that there are plenty of examples of distributors and suppliers that have really benefited from finding ways to share data between both sides. And AD is very involved with this, and you were the AD network chairman and a divisional board member from 2006 to 2015. Today, like you said, AIS is using AD's product data subscription service. Anything else you can touch on how that service is benefiting AIS?
As far as the product data goes, or as far as
Sure.
our relationship with AD?
I would say how the product data goes and just how you guys are leveraging that.
Yeah, like I said before, we adopted it as our full categorization. So we had built our own categorization with an older website, but once we understood the completeness of ADs, we wiped out our old one, redid all of our categorization within our website to the AD data. So it just makes it so easy to onboard new items. And the nice thing is it not only categorized items for the web, it categorized items internally. So
Hmm.
now I have a way of running reports to I want to figure out all the safety supplies that I sell within a broad safety category. I never had the ability to do that before. So having things categorized just gives you so many more capabilities as far as reporting. So we've leveraged it internally, externally, as far as whenever a new manufacturer that we start doing business with and we start looking at product data, first thing I tell them is, are you on AD? Are you on the e-commerce e-content initiative? And if they're not, I said, well, this is a way for you to do it once. You do it once and you're going to provide data for 200 plus distributors across all the multiple divisions that AD supports. So it's so much more efficient for a manufacturer to provide the data to AD. AD does all the heavy lifting as far as, categorizing it, enriching it, everything else. But it's a great way, and it's actually pretty economical for manufacturers. So we had a new manufacturer, CS Unitech, we just started doing business with, staffed a supplier, and they thankfully made that decision to engage with AD for the e-content. And, it will benefit not just us, but every other distributor that sells CS Unitech.
Yeah.
So it's just nice to have this entity that is always working on our behalf and helping us with so many pieces of content that we would never be able to do on our own.
Yeah. And then the last planned question I have for you here is going back to that STAFTA panel, which was moderated by Alan Guthrie, who is the Director of Strategic Sourcing at DXP Enterprises. One of the last questions that he asked there was particularly interesting, and one that I'm probably going to borrow for a lot of interviews going forward. It was, if you were restarting your career today, what would you do differently? So if you don't mind rehashing what you shared back in November at that panel, I want to pose that question to you again here. Knowing what you know from your 40 years in this industry, what would you do differently if you were a young professional starting out in the industrial supply sector? So how would you take that?
Well, I think very similar to what I said on the panel is I think I would have stretched myself a little earlier in my career because, when I started, I was kind of an introvert, and, talking in front of people and all of that was a frightening endeavor for me, which I think it is for most folks. But I think joining something like Toastmasters early on and making myself do that. I mean, there's some, if you read Warren Buffett, that's one of the things that he says is more important than anything else is take a public speaking class.
Hmm.
Learn to conquer that fear of speaking in public, because that holds you back. You could have all the best ideas in the world, but if you're not able to articulate them because you're afraid, then you're going to be holding them to yourself or just having them within small groups. So I think that's something that you got to do early on, is force yourself to break out of your comfort zone and do things that are hard for you. Because every time you do that, it's something that's memorable. It's something that you grow as a person and you gain confidence, and and you're proud of what you accomplished when you go outside your comfort zone.
Yeah. And I think I would give that same advice for if someone asked me, what would your advice be for anyone entering this channel? It
Yeah,
would be network as much as you can, as fast as you can, as early as you can, because like you said, the same thing. I spent my first couple of years in this industry kind of quietly watching and observing, which is fine, I think to a certain extent, but the more that you can make conversation with people in this industry, that just the faster you're growing your network. And like I think someone else on that panel said, your network in this industry is your lifeline. And so
good.
the faster you can grow that, the better off you're going to be in the long run. So I thought that panelist did a great job of tackling that.
Yeah, no, I think the panel was really well done, and it had a lot of good content for the young college folks. It
Yeah.
was a lot of fun to participate in.
Yeah. Well, that is all the planned questions I had for you, Dale. But before we sign off, is there anything else about AIS that you want to share, or just general thoughts about the industry as parting words here?
Well, I just think for anybody that's not familiar with the industry, and especially with the staff, it's just a great industry. So much of how we sell, it's still relationship selling. It's still about getting to know your customers and them trusting you, and that's why they buy from you. So don't be afraid as a young person to explore it. It's not something people are always exposed to. It is more of a word of mouth to find out about it, but it's a wonderful industry. It's something I'm proud to be a part of, and I'm proud to have had an impact on, and it's kind of neat to reach a stage in your career where you're able to use all of your knowledge and your contacts to make a difference. So that's kind of what my focus is on for the next 10 years or however long I want to work, is to continue to make a difference both in my company but within the industry.
That's great. Well, Dale, thanks again for joining the MDM podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the MDM podcast. Like what you just heard? Subscribe to hear more, or leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts, or see them all at mdm.com/podcasts.